When it comes to who I am, I'm severely clear, my dear. No fear in this new frontier, if I've been planning this trip for many light years. You had your World War I and the universe watches. World War II, you exploded the atomic bomb, and there was no judgment in our part because the ego detaches. But the alert regarding Earth was warning. The kids have found the matches. We need a team to go down to this land of extreme natural beauty. But be careful when you enter Babylon, for they will slaughter you for less than rubies. So there I stood, Kurt Nugent, light worker, system buster, illusion crusher, answering the call of duty. They said, light worker, we greet you with glad tidings, but in your previous lives you've been murdered many times simply for your writings. And your mission today, it's not as easy as it seemed. You see, your clarity is now pristine, but before your insertion, your memory will be redeemed. And up in your arrival, you'll be wiped clean. The vibration of Earth is dense, the frequency low. So stay grounded in light wherever you go. The illusion is so thick, it's ridiculous. Even the so-called food was manufactured to make you sick. Everything is backwards in this twisted reality. The justice system is built up on inequality. Lawmen dressed in uniforms of brutality. Schools destroy education, doctors destroy health, and religion destroys spirituality. The leaders were placed there by puppeteers who don't care. So they instructed them on how to be cavalier in the way that they smear and scare. The planet is covered in fear, engineered to leave you so unclear that you could be enslaved with light beers and empty careers. Fail to recall your mission and you could easily become a pioneer trapped in third density for 26,000 years. This is not an easy mission. You're going to need a way to regain your memory fast. So even though it will make you an outcast, we suggest you choose at least one parent who's blinded by religion, because you're going to need a contrast. Everything is a test. Ignore the chorus, stay focused and manifest the best. Every division is an illusion set up to ensure your confusion. You see, you're a part of everything, and everything is a part of you. So there's no race, no religion, no politics, no sexual preference that should ever divide you. You are one. And the minute you participate in judgment, you hit the pavement with your enslavement. Most of the planet will operate in 2 strands of DNA. You will have the ability to operate in 12. But the only way you can do this is to make sure that the ego yields to the higher self. Calmly, I replied. With the power of the Trinity, I will transcend much energy. I know what's ahead of me. I understand that thoughts create reality, and I've stood on the zenith and seen it. Victory is ours, and I'm going to redeem it. So insert me under the sign of Scorpio so that I can transcend from Scorpion to Eagle to Phoenix. They said, Kirk, inserting you directly into Babylon is far too dangerous. We will place you with a different team so that you won't be neutralized immediately upon hitting the scene. We'll start you off in Jamaica. Make your way to Babylon shortly after you turn 15. By the time your immune system will be strong enough to resist the poisons of their vaccine. Your guidance system will be the chakra of the heart. Your mission is simple: shine light into the dark. If your religion is anything other than love, you will miss the mark. And if you get caught up in the divisiveness, you will be absorbed by the dark. Forgive and forgive quickly. That is your only path. And whatever you do to a single human being, that karma you will eventually have to marry. In other words, the love that you withhold is the pain that you will carry. You could easily get trapped in third density. So let the words I am guide you back to your true identity. And when you come to a fork in the road and you're confused how to make the call, ask yourself, is this decision serving my ego, or is it serving the highest good of all? Be conscious of your intentions in everything that you do. And remember, you don't have to attend every argument that you're invited to. Love will be the greatest asset of them all. Attraction will be your strength, resistance your downfall. Your emotions are linked to a magnetic tower. So whatever you love, you empower. Whatever you empower, you will establish. Show the planet how to unclench their fists and establish bliss. However, you're there to teach, not to insist. Your heart chakra is divine guidance and should never be dismissed. And it's always easier to remove your attention than it is to resist. So as you can see, there's never a reason to be pissed. You're being sent to stand out, so don't try to fit in. And when you need to commune with God, that's when you quietly go within. And you will know that you've missed the mark once you start seeking him in a building. In this twisted system, you could easily make yourself a victim. Remember that your power ends where your fear begins. So let spirit be your guide. Let spirit give you the words to write. Keep your eyes focused solely on the good. You're there to understand, not necessarily to be understood. So don't try explaining yourself at any given length. Instead, go to nature whenever you feel emotionally spent. Avoid the noise, and silence will be your strength. Trust your feelings in everything that you do. You are being divinely guided, so to thine own self be true. Everyone is a teacher, they're neither friend nor foe. So never be offended. Being offended is a weakness of the ego. Godspeed, light worker, second wave of the ground crew. May the light surround you, may the force be with you. And as I turned to leave the room, I noticed that you were there too. Yes, you who are listening to this poem, you who are reading these words, you were right there next to me, being instructed on the protocols of third density, being reminded of your mission and its intensity. So it doesn't make sense to me to see you living here in confusion, buying into the illusion, having your ego making the decisions, doubting your transmission, not trusting your intuition. You're a god filled with inhibitions. So my question is, light worker, have you forgotten your mission?
Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio Show with Tom and Ramon, and it's a wonderful year. Not only day, but just amazing year. Just the kind of things I'm seeing from people, and you know, when I see people grow and you know, the light bulb goes off, it's like something happens to me where I feel like I get pushed up. So, you know, as each and every one of us are you know, growing, I feel like there's a growth within everybody else, even that guy who you think maybe is like closed off, doesn't care, you know, there's a growth. So, you know, that's why that inner work is so important. But speaking of inner work, Tom, I saw a video and I posted it on the 100th Monkey Facebook page. So for those of you who do Facebook, you can join us there. Just put in the 100th Monkey Radio on Facebook and you'll find us. Or you can go to the links. But anyway, I posted this page, this video, and these two guys just go up to some random homeless man and say, "Hey, you hungry?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm very hungry." And he was like, "You need some new clothes?" He was like, "Yeah." And then the guy was like, the homeless guy was a little skeptical. He says, "This ain't no scam, is it?" He's like, No, sir, it's not." And they took him out, brought him a bunch of new clothes, took him to a hotel, paid for two nights in a room. He took a shower, they went and got him a haircut, then they took him to eat Brazilian style food and just stuffed him into, he just couldn't eat anymore. And I was like, "Here you go, here's 2 days." And the man was just so happy he couldn't stop crying throughout the whole thing. So, you know, that's just really amazing. If you can do something like that for a person, it would be amazing. If you can't, then, you know, just like that other video I put on Facebook where, you know, they just went up and gave a bag of food or maybe brought some sneakers or a t-shirt or a pie of pizza.
There's other things like those seed bombs. I still love those seed bomb ideas.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I mean, there's all sorts of stuff we can proactively do that's in balance and is, you know, when I say imbalance, I mean it's not offensive to anyone, and it's something that brings its own rewards with it too.
Well, I mean, the other idea is you can get the homeless people involved in it. You know, give them some seeds, because pretty much they'll be feeding themselves. You know,
yeah,
when and they can take care of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of places people can go with this stuff. You know, random act of kindness, man. It's some good stuff.
Well, I have a homework for those of you who would like to take on this homework, and this is something I want to do myself. And you know, like I said before, if you listen to the live show, I posted this video. Then a bar I like to go to, he had reposted the video and said, "I'm going to go do this," where people are just going throughout the world. You see people going up and giving acts of kindness, Philippines, United States, Poland, Spain. And I would like for you to go up to a homeless person, give them something, anything, and videotape that, and then I'll have, not that Tom's not busy enough, but I'll have Tom make another video thing, and Tom, that's homework goes for you as well.
Oh, great.
So, yeah. So,
thanks for volunteering me, Ramon.
Well, you don't have a choice. Everybody else has a choice. Tom doesn't. But, so what's new with you, Tom? I just jabbered on and...
Oh, it's all good. Hey, things have been moving really fast here on this planet. And and I think everybody is on board with the fact that something did shift around the beginning of the year, whether it was the December 3rd, 21st thing, or if it's something else. I think that's just kind of a broad marker in our linear time track. But something definitely shifted, and we are, we're on the uphill slope right now as far as we're growing, and things are opening up for so many of us, and that's what makes some of the guests that we're having on, in particular the guests we've got on tonight. These kind of stories are something all of you people will be able to relate to, and go, it brings it into your realm of possibility to have a much deeper and fuller connection with who and what you are. And I mean, it's I'm in constant awe of this place that we find ourselves in, and hence Ramona and I doing this show. I mean, I mean, I keep forgetting those guys' names, but those two guys who, I mean, I just can't talk enough about those two guys who made the video. And they was like, let's make a trend that matters. And that to me is like a sign of 100th Monkey, that even other people were willing to jump in. It's like, okay, let's give this, and when they filmed that, it just inspires so many other people. Yeah. So that alone to me is like 100th Monkeys. Exactly. Yeah, we're not as cold of a species as, we would think sometimes, or they would have us believe, better said. So, I can be pretty cold, Ramon.
To me, you are. Well, we have an amazing guest, Tom. Please tell us about this amazing person.
We've got Garnet Schulhauser with us tonight. He practiced corporate law with two large law firms in Calgary, Canada for 34 years before retiring to Vancouver Island in 2008, where he now lives with his wife, Cathy, and a little dog, Abby. He grew up on a small farm in Saskatchewan and attended law school in Saskatoon before moving to Calgary to begin his legal career. Although he did not begin writing until after he retired from his legal practice, he now pursues his new career with a passion. In his spare time, he enjoys golfing, kayaking, and long hikes in the forest with his dog. He takes great delight in family gatherings and his two sons, Blake and his wife Lauren, and Colin, and looks forward to the arrival of grandchildren someday. Garnet's life changed dramatically one day in 2007 when he was confronted on the street by a homeless man named Albert. Over the next few years, he had a series of conversations with Albert, who was actually a wise spirit guide in disguise, who disclosed startling new truths about life, death, the afterlife, and God. Albert answered all of life's big questions about who we are, our purpose for being on earth, and what happens to us when we die. Albert's revelations were inspiring, uplifting, and comforting, and flew in the face of almost everything that Christian holy men had been preaching for centuries. He wrote Dancing on a Stamp at Albert's request, so that these revelations would be available to everyone. His website is www.dancingonastamp.com. Welcome to the 100th Monkey Radio, Garnet Schulhauser.
Thanks for the nice introduction, Tom.
I absolutely love your book, by the way. I mean, it is one of those, one of those page turners.
Well, thank you for saying that.
Very, very easy read and I mean, you articulated the concepts extremely well. And, I find that a rare jewel, even in the woo-woo world, to find somebody who can lay out these concepts in a kind of layman's terms where it's understandable for everybody. So kudos to you for a fantastic job.
Thank you for saying that.
So, wow, this is what a combination, coming out of the corporate world, the law, being a lawyer for 34 years and then into this field. It's just, for me, that's just, all I can say is, wow, I've seen people come from a lot of different fields and, such into the consciousness field. But when I find people that have come out of that sort of, rigid third dimensional type, of profession into something that is completely out of the box, I'm just absolutely amazed. So give us a little bit of background, if you would, on how your head turned away from out of the corporate world into where we are now.
Well, it was quite an amazing occurrence, actually, and it was interesting that Ramon's introduction talked about people helping a homeless man. In my case, it was the exact opposite. A homeless man popped out of nowhere and helped me. So there's some irony in that, I think. Anyway, so as you said in my introduction, I was practicing corporate law in Calgary, in Canada, and I was a partner in a very large law firm, one of the largest in Western Canada, and I was a typical corporate, straight-laced, stuffed shirt kind of a guy. And so one day I decided to go for a stroll on the street in front of our building. It was a sunny afternoon in May, and so I took the elevator down, started walking on the street in my navy pinstripe suit, looking very much like a corporate lawyer. And I was strolling down the street, which I had done many times before. And all of a sudden on this day, out of nowhere, out popped in front of me this homeless man who just literally stopped me in my tracks. And he looked like a typical homeless man because he had long, stringy hair and a scraggly beard. And his clothes looked like they'd been slept in for weeks. And usually my practice would be to do a quick sidestep and go around these people because I'd encountered them many times in the mall before, and they were usually asking for money. And in those days, I just felt it best to ignore them, which I don't anymore. Anyway, the reason I didn't sort of turn tail and run was because this homeless man was very different. Although he looked like a typical homeless person, he had amazing, dazzling, sparkling blue eyes that shone like two little blue stars. And his eyes were sort of doing two things to me at the same time. The first was that his gaze was penetrating deep inside of me, right down. I felt like he was looking right down to the bottom of my soul. And I really sensed that he knew everything about me, even though we had never met before. I sensed that he knew everything I'd ever said or done in my life. And so, despite the fact that I sort of felt like I was naked and exposed in front of this man who I'd never met before, the other thing coming from his eyes was this wave of pure, unconditional love that was just sort of entering my body and infusing my whole body with an amazing feeling of peace and security. So I knew this guy was quite different because I've never had that feeling before. So I just stood there like I was transfixed, like a deer caught in the headlights. I don't know how long I stood there, and I didn't care because for me, it could have lasted forever. It was such an amazing feeling. And so he sort of broke the spell, this homeless man, his name was Albert, I found out later, by saying to me, "Why are you here?" And then he just sort of turned around and went into the doorway of a nearby store. So it took me a few seconds to collect my wits. And then when I did, I thought, well, I need to go find this guy and find out why he stopped me and who he is and what does he want with me. So I went into the store to try to find him and walked up and down the aisles, and there was only one entrance, so I didn't see him go out, but he was nowhere to be seen there. And then I walked back into the street and walked up and down the street for a few blocks trying to find him, but he just wasn't anywhere in sight. So then I gave up and I slowly walked back to my office with my head in a tizzy, trying to figure out what had just happened. And so that night at home, I was still having this whole episode revolve around in my mind, and I was trying to understand what had happened. And I resolved that I just had, at all costs, I had to go find this guy again. So the next afternoon at exactly the same time, I walked back out on the same street, and I started walking to where I met him the first time, and I walked up and down a few times. He was nowhere around. And as you can guess, just about the time I was ready to give up, I see him sitting on a bench on the street all by himself. So I walked over to him and I said, "Why did you stop me the other day, and why did you ask me that question?" And he said, "You've been asking a lot of questions all your life, and I'm here to give you the answers and to help you on your journey." And so that sort of got our conversation going. And from there, we conversed off and on for several months after that. And he answered all my questions, and he told me early on that he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he told me that that I was the only person who could actually see him as the homeless man. So if a passerby had walked by the bench that afternoon, they would have seen me sitting on the bench talking to myself. So it was really quite, sorry?
Yeah, I was going to say, before we move on, because I think this is a very important point, because if I get this correct, when you sat down next to him and you asked him that, he said that your lawyer mind kind of kicked in at that point, right?
Yeah. Initially, I was a bit skeptical because being a lawyer for so long, you can't turn your lawyer mind off. So before the conversation got underway, when he said that he was here to help me on my journey, I said, "Well, how can you help me when you can't even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping in the street for weeks and you smell like a dead fish." And he smiled at me and he said, "Looks can be deceiving." He said to me, "You look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade." He said, "You can turn tail and go back to your office and see if you can find your answers in all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down and talk to me, take a chance." So then, despite I managed to sort of put down my skeptical lawyer mind, and my intuition kicked in, and I knew that this man was different. He was special, and I really needed to sit down and talk to him, because after all, what did I have to lose? So that, after that sort of first bit of skepticism, I sat down, and then once we started talking, of course, I really knew that he was a special person, even before he told me he was my spirit guide. But he had some amazing answers, and he gave me some amazing messages to pass on to people. And the reason I wrote the book was that because after we'd had several conversations, I said to him, "Well, what you're telling me is quite amazing, and I think that it would be very comforting and inspiring for many people to hear what you're telling me." And he said, "Yeah, well, they are, because you're going to write a book," which is the first I'd ever heard of the concept of me writing a book. Huh. But so I was a bit skeptical about that as well. And I said, "Well, okay, Albert, I know you want your message spread, but why are you asking me to write a book? Because I've never written one, and I'm basically a rank amateur." I said, "Why didn't you get an accomplished author like Stephen King or J.K. Rowling to write your book for you?" And he said, "I have my reasons. You don't need to know them now, but suffice it to say, I've chosen you, and let's get on with it, and quit your whining and get on with your book." So that's how that arose.
So I'm curious to know where your mind was at this time. Were you chewing over some of these concepts, or were you troubled in any way? And mentally, as far as trying to figure out what the hell was going on, or anything at this point in your life?
Yeah, and let me just give you a brief background so you can understand where I was coming from when I met Albert that day. I was raised in a very religious Roman Catholic family. And it was very religious. We went to church on Sundays and holy days of obligation, and First Fridays and First Saturdays, and we said the family rosary, and I was an altar boy and all that stuff. So it was a very religious indoctrination for me as a child. But by the time I sort of reached my teenage years, I had begun to question a lot of the things that the Roman Catholic Church had told me, and questioned some of their rules and beliefs, which just didn't make any sense to me. And so I sort of slowly drifted away. And by the time I was in probably my late 30s, I had more or less rejected a lot of what the Catholic Church stood for. But then I was sort of like, okay, well, I rejected what I was taught, what I grew up with. Now I need something to replace it. And I was sort of drifting in no man's land. And so for years after that, I read all kinds of books on various religions, on spiritual matters, metaphysical books, and I was basically casting around trying to find something else to latch onto. So I was in this sort of turmoil, and I would always, it seemed like for whatever reason on a Monday morning, and I used to hate Monday mornings when I was working. Monday mornings I'd be looking at my face in the mirror as I was shaving, and I would have all the same questions kept on churning through my mind, which were like, so who am I? Where did I come from? What's my purpose in life? And when I die, what happens to me? Do I go to heaven or hell? Or do I simply cease to exist, disappearing into nothingness? And so those questions had been swirling in my mind actually that morning that I met Albert. And so he was there, he said, to answer my questions, which were those questions and many others, because as we went through our conversation, every time he answered one of my questions, two more questions would pop up in my mind. So the thing sort of kept on going. And it's in a lot of cases, Albert would, if I was sort of going off on a tangent, he would not answer my question or tell me that he would answer it later, because he had a very specific focus for me. He wanted me to write this book, and he basically knew what he wanted to be in the book, although he didn't write it for me. And he needed to keep me on track. And so that was his goal. And you mentioned earlier, Tom, that you found the book easy to read and understand. That was one of the mandates that Albert gave to me. He said, whatever you do, don't write like a lawyer. He said, don't fill your book with esoteric terms and, spiritual concepts and metaphysical concepts that are hard to understand. He said, take your lawyer hat off and try to write like you're an ordinary person and make it easy to read and understand by people who have no background in spirituality or metaphysics, so that the person on the street will be able to read it and understand it without any problem. And so that was what he told me to do, and I tried to do that when I wrote the book.
Yeah. Do you think part of the reason why he chose you in the beginning is because of maybe you have your history as a lawyer, be able to ask many questions,
Yeah, lawyers tend to be sort of have that inquisitive mind to ask questions, because when you're dealing with when you have a client that has a problem, I was a corporate lawyer, so when you're interviewing your client about what it is they'd like you to do, of course you have to ask them questions because they don't know what to volunteer that's important to you. So you just learn to ask questions so you can zero in on what you need to know in order to help them. So my lawyer training was clearly helped me in that regard. That may be why he chose me. I'm not sure. The other thing I think is, as a lawyer, particularly as a corporate lawyer, I had to write a lot of documents like prospectuses and offering memoranda and long letters and submissions to regulatory bodies. And so I was reasonably good at wordsmithing, although I'd never written a book or certainly not about spiritual matters. So I think that was the other thing, the other tool that he thought I had that would be useful. But I don't know the full story, and I expect that someday I will find out from him why it was me. And I know that it was all prearranged before I was born on the spirit side. He didn't, tell me how it all went about, but I know that for sure it was prearranged that he was to be one of my spirit guides, and that he would appear to me as a homeless man and confront me in the street, and we'd go on from there. So, and of course, none of us remember what all those discussions that happened before we're born, but I'm certain that is how it was all arranged beforehand.
Yeah. That whole part with you and in the beginning where he says, it's all facade. When I first heard that, I found it so amazing, because it's so true how, us human beings we work so hard to keep up this facade and, keeping up with the Joneses. How Would you call that because me and Tom have a term that we haven't really heard anybody else use this term, Tom, the proverbial 2x4. Would you call that your, like, smack of reality kind of when he said that?
Yeah, that hit home because we all sort of go through life, as you say, Ramon, building up our image. And then after a while, we sort of, become identified with that image that we've built up. And we don't realize really what it says to other people who are looking at us. And I know for sure that I was sort of trying to be the typical corporate lawyer at a big law firm. And I'm sure I was, I dressed that way and I talked that way. And I was with a bunch of my partners who were all sort of in the same league. And of course, all of them would have never imagined in a million years that I could, write a book like Dancing on a Stamp. And a lot of them still can't, they shake their head and they still can't believe it. But, the whole encounter with Albert right at the front was like a 2x4 smack over the head. As I went on from there, I just realized that, there's no point in hiding behind this corporate lawyer facade anymore, that it just wasn't me and I needed to move on to something else. And so within a year after I met Albert, I actually retired from my practice. Which was probably a bit sooner than I otherwise would, but I knew that, number one, the legal practice didn't seem to, have any value to me anymore. Like it would just seem to be, I was going through the motions and pretending to be somebody who I no longer wanted to be. And then the second thing is I knew that Albert was pressing me to write this book. And as long as I was practicing law, there was no way I could write a book, because when you're practicing law, you're very stressed out. You don't have time for extra things, and I knew it just would never happen. So that kind of spurred me on to sort of accelerate my retirement date, which I did. I retired in May of 2008, and I needed to get out of the city I'd lived in most of my life. And so we retired to Vancouver Island, which is, well, as Tom, you probably know, is a kind of a more of a laid back place, and some place where I could, sit down and write quietly without being bothered by clients or, 200 emails every day to respond to. So that was, the meeting with Albert was sort of that smack in the head with a 2x4 that took me on a direction which is basically 180 degrees from where I was before that.
A question popped into my head while you were talking about the law firm. Have any of your old co-workers there, has this book had any effect on any of them that you're aware of?
Yeah, I received actually, when I launched my book last October, I did an email blast to a bunch of people, including some of my former partners, just announcing my book. And then I've actually got some really nice emails back from some of them saying, good for you. It was quite a courageous step you took to sort of basically come out of the spiritual closet. And that a lot of them said they were surprised. They never thought that was something that I could do. So I received a lot of really favorable comments. I also received a lot of dead silence. So, nobody called me or sent an email saying that you're full of crap and, have you lost your mind or anything. But the mere fact that they didn't respond or make any comment indicated to me that they probably thought that, but just weren't going to bother saying it. So
right.
It was sort of a mixed reaction. Some guys were okay, and others, I think, they just found it hard to swallow. But that's, I knew that going into this. I knew one of the things I struggled with when I was writing the book, and as long as before it was published, of course, I could have kept it to myself. And I was struggling with whether I should release it, because then it would be public and everyone would know. And I was concerned about what my former colleagues would say, what some of my old friends back in Calgary would say. I was even concerned about what some of my relatives would say, because I have 3 sisters who live in Regina who are all still practicing Catholics. And so I was wondering if they would shun me and refuse to talk to me after my book was out. So I had all these things churning through my mind. And I just finally decided, well, it's something that I have to do. And if I didn't do it, I'd regret it forever. And if some people, shun me or won't talk to me anymore, well, so be it. They're on their own path and I have to go on mine. So I did it.
Yeah, you'll talk to them on the other side.
Exactly. Then they'll figure it out.
You know, the amazing thing about when someone goes through something like that, you really see who are your real, true, close friends and even family, because when you go through something like this, it's, you know, if someone's a real friend, even if they don't agree with you, they're going to be supportive. But when they just shun you, then it really shows what the relationship was made of. So I think it's always an amazing contrast. And your life seems to be full of contrast. They're like, okay, we're going to have you compare this and this throughout your entire life. Do you think that if you were raised differently other than, you know, very religious, like if you were raised, let's say, by hippies or you know, someone along that line, do you think you would be on the same path, or it would be a whole different story?
You know, it's a good question, Ron. I don't know the answer to that. I expect that my religious upbringing probably had something to do with making me a suitable candidate, just because, you know, I had sort of one firm set of beliefs that was, you know, more or less shoved down my throat when I was a youngster. And then I had to go through the process of rejecting it. And then because I was used to having something to believe in, then I was casting about trying to find something else to replace it. So that may have been the reason. I don't know. I don't know how children raised by hippies, what they believe, or maybe they have no beliefs. I don't know. I've always thought that everyone had to believe something. I mean, even if you believe that there is no God and there is no life after death, at least that is a belief. But I really don't know the answer to that, Ramon. I can only speculate that my upbringing had something to do with it.
I think I was going more for the contrast, which you answer, because it's just that part is such a common story, because, you know, I went to Catholic school, and around the same age I started, you know, just saying something's wrong here, and I would ask, you know, the fathers questions and just get in trouble instead of answers, which never made sense to me.
Well, yeah, I entirely agree with you, because my experience was if you asked the priest or the nuns a question, generally they didn't have the answer, and they'd often get angry and upset and basically tell me that I shouldn't bother asking questions, because you ask too many questions, that's a sin. You know, it was just that sort of stonewalling is what I got. It sounds like that's sort of what you got, and that's just because there's so many things that are questionable about the Catholic religion that. And they have no rational answer, and the foot soldiers, you know, the priests and the nuns, of course, they don't really know the answer, so they just give you a bunch of gobbledygook and tell you to stop asking questions, you know. I mean, and those are things that sort of bothered me as I was growing in teenage years and on, about, you know, why do they have these beliefs that didn't make any rational sense? And there's just so many of them, and you can go on forever. I'm sure you know, Ramon, exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah, thou shalt not question.
Yes,
exactly. That's the 13th or 14th.
Yeah, that's the 11th commandment. Yeah. So, you know, there's a tremendous amount of people that are coming out of the major religions that are what I would term true seekers, people who truly want to know God. And those ones who are true seekers and truly want to know God in that way, and are open enough to actually receive the answers, they're actually moving away from those organized religions, and they're finding, you know, the alternatives. I guess kind of the question I have here is, any suggestions or advice that you would have for, or anything that you gleaned through your communications with Albert on how a person deals with coming out of that strict, rigid, dogmatic, organized religious state?
Well, I think the first thing is that they have to understand that most of the rules and beliefs were set up in these religions by religious holy men, and, you know, most organized religions have been patriarchal, so it's men doing this, and that despite the fact that they say that their rules and beliefs come from God, they're actually man-made rules, and they're made by men, various men through the ages who who purport to be speaking on behalf of God and telling the people that these are God's rules, but they're really created by these men who, in a lot of cases, have their own agendas. And basically what they're trying to do is increase their membership so that they have people who attend church and throw money into the collection plate. And that gives them power. And, so to do that, they try to control their people through guilt and fear. So they create all these rules, which they say are God's rules. And they tell you that if you break God's rules, you're really a bad person and you've offended God, and you should try to make amends. And then the second part of that is the fear component, which is if you've broken these rules and you haven't made amends with God before you die, he'll send you to an awful place called hell where you'll suffer forever. So, guilt and fear were sort of the two controlling factors that a lot of these religions have used through the ages. And people just have to understand, that when they're trying to come out of, break away from these organized religions, they have to understand where these guys are coming from. And they have to understand the new concept, which a lot of people have embraced and which Albert, and I discussed, which is that, God or the source or the creator, whoever you want to call him, doesn't make rules for us on earth. So no religion has rules that were God made. They're all man-made. And God does not create rules for us on earth, and God will not judge us or punish us for what we do. And if they understand that, and that everyone, when they die, no matter what they did, goes back to the wonder and the beauty of the spirit side, if they understand that and where the organized religions are trying to come from, hopefully they can just see the light and say, okay, well, what really feels truer in my heart? Is it what these organized religions have been telling me, since the time I was a child, with their fear and guilt? Or is it Albert's message and messages that other people are giving, which is that, you should cast aside your guilt and fear and embrace, love and compassion and forgiveness, and understand that you're here to experience things on this planet. And there are no rules made by God or the source. And when you pass on, you go back to the spirit side along with everyone else. So if they can sort of look at the two sort of concepts, and as Albert told me, he can't be assured that everyone's going to believe what he said in my book, but he said, you have to look at what he says and look at what your religion says, and then hold them up to the light and see which one has the most holes in it, and which one feels right to you, and just go for it that way. So hopefully they would be able to, doing that, they would be able to sort of say, well, goodbye to my religion, which is not an easy thing to do, because when you've been living with it for so long, you have that fear at the back of your mind that, well, but if I leave my religion and I break the rules that I've been told God created, will I really go to hell?
Right. I found, me personally, when I got my 2x4 upside the head and started my wake-up process, I had never been, into any types of religions or anything. I mean, I was born and baptized Catholic, and periodically through my childhood, managed to get into a church of one type or another. But as far as, any real concerns for, God, spirituality, religion, it was the last thing on my mind. My pattern response when, anything along a spiritual or religious, nature was brought up was, religion was created to control the masses. That was my patented response. Well, when I started my wake-up process, I read the Bible cover to cover twice. I mean, straight through. I wanted to understand. We got a billion Christians or a billion Catholics on the planet, and who knows how many other Christians. And I decided, I'm going to have to go here. So I went 110% into Christianity, and to try to understand what was really going on. And it was the Bible itself which led me away from organized religion. And I was sitting there reading, I think it is Revelations. There's a verse in there that says, take this book and eat it. It'll be sweet in your mouth, but sour in your stomach. And as I was reading this, I got this flash of I saw myself from a third person perspective holding a book, the Bible, and it was the book that I was supposed to eat. So, I mean, so I got the message right out of the book that there was something wrong there, and it was that was the moment, and the one thing that actually, that was the pivotal point for me, personally, to, actually start looking elsewhere and considering other things. I mean, I found all sorts of other contradictions within that book too, but, that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. So, anyways, let's see. So
I want to get a little bit into Albert, and I don't know if personality would be the right word, but what kind of personality is Albert?
Well, he was really quite a. After we got talking, it was really quite. I realized it was quite an informal chat. It wasn't, Albert didn't sort of preach or lecture to me, and for the most part, he had a great sense of humor, which may surprise people. And I questioned him on that, and he said, "Well, of course, why shouldn't humor exist on the spirit side? In fact, he said the folks in the spirit side often laugh themselves silly watching the antics of humans on Earth." But he was quite a humorous guy, and he would take shots at me for my many human foibles, which are deservedly so, I guess. It was really like two friends chatting over a beer. I mean, just like how you and I are talking right now. And so that was really, it made me be more relaxed, and and he, I could challenge him and he wouldn't get upset, and he could challenge me and I wouldn't get upset, and so it was a really sort of a give and take sort of conversation. Although he did struggle at times trying to explain some concepts to me, and he would sometimes figuratively throw up his hands and say, "Well, I have to remember that you're still dealing with your human mind, and it has its limitations, and it's sometimes I don't have the right language to explain what I'm trying to get across." So that was the only times that he got a bit frustrated. And sometimes he'd just say, you don't need to understand that now. When you get back to the spirit side, you'll remember it all. And so be patient. It'll come back to you eventually. And it's not that important for you to know it now. But anyway, it was really quite a very pleasant, set of conversations I had with him.
So, I kind of like to, now let's jump into some of the content that came through in your conversations. I suppose we should start with some of the big questions that we all ask ourselves is, who are we? Let's start with that. Who are we?
Okay. Well, yeah, that was sort of my starting point as well. Like I said to Albert, who am I? He said, I and every other human, on this planet, he said, we're all eternal souls that exist forever. And he said, the best comparison he had was that we're sort of like beings of energy in our natural state, beings of energy that spun out from the source. And he sort of gave me the analogy of sparks of light spinning out from the central sun. And he said we were all one. We were sort of part of the source then, and the source spun us out to go and explore the universe. And because we are still part of the source and connected to the source, as is everything else in the universe, everything that we experience in our lives, whether it be, this life on Earth or previous lives or elsewhere in the universe, is experienced by the source, so that the source who created everything, gets to experience and understand what it created in every sort of different sort of nuance and sense. And basically the source is the sum total of everything in the universe. So we're all little parts, little individuations of the source. And we're out here to explore and evolve and experience things. And someday, if we choose to, we can, merge back to the source for a while and then come out again. It's sort of a never-ending journey, a sort of a path of evolution that has no finish line. So that's basically who we are. It's not a easy concept to understand, but when we're on the spirit side as beings of energy, we don't have physical bodies, so we don't have to eat or drink or breathe or procreate. We don't have spouses. But he says it's quite an amazing existence, and we can basically have anything that we want there through thought creation, which is sort of an instant creation process merely by thinking about it. So that's who we are. And it's not and basically when we incarnate on Earth, we choose a physical body to live in for our current journey on Earth. And then when we die, or the physical body dies, then we go back, and then we can keep on coming back as many times as we want. And we can incarnate as humans as many times as we want. We can incarnate as, we may have started off actually as, spending some time as rocks or as plants or as animals. Humans is sort of the most complex form of incarnation on Earth. And he did say that we can also incarnate into any of the other millions of life forms that exist in the universe, many of which are obviously very different from humans. But he did say that the planet Earth is one of the toughest schools in the universe. So the fact that you and I and all the other humans are here means that our souls probably had a lot of other experience in either on Earth or various other places, because it's not a place you'd want to come if you're a sort of a neophyte on the incarnation game. Anyway, so that's who we are, and that's what our purpose is.
So being that we're part of, of God, and, we're still connected to God, and we can go back anytime, wouldn't that us also make, and I'm speaking of everything, they look around, everything around you, wouldn't that all be God itself, including us? Because I know for a lot of religious people, they get like a violent reaction when you say something like that.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. Like everything on Earth, all the people around you, all the animals, all the plants and animals and the rocks and the oceans and the rivers, that's all part of the source. Our whole planet is, and everything in the universe is. And so, part of the problem that humans have, and why we have so many problems with violence and humans harming one another, is because we don't really understand that we're all part of the one source, and we're not separate. We seem to be separate, but really we're not. And if humans could sort of appreciate that fact that every one of us is part of God and we're all in this together, then we can sort of get rid of some of our negative emotions and reactions. But yeah, you're right. Religious people, when I was a child, I was basically told that God was sort of like this old man with a beard sitting on a gold throne in the sky, and he was there, and everyone else is down here, and we're totally separate. And he controlled what happened in our lives, and when we died, he would judge us and either send us to heaven or to hell, depending on what we did. So it was clearly a totally separate thing. So to religious people, if you say, well, you're really part of God, they think that's blasphemy. How can I be part of God? God is this supreme being who's up there in the sky sitting on his throne, and I'm clearly just a mere mortal. So yeah, I can see why people would get upset at that if they're truly still into organized religion.
Yeah, you can obviously see the king and the peasant thing there going on. How could you be a royal family? You're a peasant.
Exactly.
Kind of mentality. What I find amazing is that their own religious text says that, though. What is it again? Me and my Father are one, and you are my brothers and sisters. And I've repeated that same line to certain family members and very religious friends of mine, and I don't know, it's almost like they go dumb and blind and deaf when I say that.
Well, it's like asking the question, as you mentioned, to the priests or whatever, is that you confront them with this, and they don't know how to respond because it's totally contrary to what they've been taught, and they don't know how to rationally respond to what you just said. And some people will try to give it a different meaning, but the fact of the matter is that they are rooted in this belief that God is up there as a king, and I'm a peasant down here on Earth. It's hard to dislodge them from that. It's they're gonna have to get there on their own. And you know what? If they leave this world still believing in that, it doesn't matter, because they'll find out when they get back to the spirit side.
Yeah. So did you ever talk to Albert about the whole Jesus persona and some of the avatars that have been on the planet in the past?
Yeah, he's when we got into our discussion about religion, and I asked him about Jesus Christ, who is sort of the founding member of the Christian church, and he said, well, the soul that incarnated as Jesus he said was a very evolved soul. It was a master, and he came to Earth, incarnated as Jesus Christ, not because he needed to learn anything. He'd already learned all his lessons, but he came to help us, and it was sort of he wanted to have an effect on humans at the time, and he came here to do that. And you can certainly argue that he had a tremendous effect because, as Tom said, there's like over 1 billion Catholics in the world, and so he's had a tremendous influence, even though a lot of what has developed from the Catholic Church, didn't directly come from him. It was developed by men, but he started a very significant institution, and that was what his goal was. And there's been other, masters like him, like, Buddha and Moses and Muhammad, and, the list can go on. And he said there's a lot of masters who have incarnated on Earth, but who weren't prominent, so you would know about them. And there's a lot among us today who are sort of working quietly behind the scenes, and you wouldn't know that they are something special. But he definitely wasn't down on Jesus Christ. He said the soul that was Jesus Christ was a very amazing and brave soul to come and do what he did. When he did it.
Okay, I want to go back to the who question again. I mean, you did a fantastic job of explaining, who and what we are as far as our divine nature. I'm curious if you and Albert ever spoke about the different, I suppose, spiritual dimensions. There's a lot of talk now about ascension and ascending into the 5th dimension, 6th dimension, 7th dimension. Have you gotten any sort of clarity along those lines through Albert? Or through any other sources that you may have tapped into?
I did briefly ask Albert that question, and he didn't. He said that that's something that we can get into later. So it wasn't something that we really got into in depth for this book. And of course, as you know, there wasn't. I didn't discuss it in this book, but he said that that's something that should go in the 2nd or 3rd book. So I'm about to begin my 2nd book. I've actually sort of started it, and I'm going to be talking to Albert on a more regular basis, and that's one of the topics. I mean, I do a lot of reading, so I know exactly what you mean about the shift for the planet Earth, and from the 3rd into the 5th and higher dimensions, and for humans to follow, and that as humans we have to raise our vibration rate so that we can sort of follow along and make the dimensional shift. So I'm aware of those from reading other books, but I didn't get an answer from Albert as to what his take was on it. But I hope that I'll get that and put it into my next book.
I suppose this will be the last question for this first hour. What about the whole savior thing that is really big in a lot of the world religions? We've got what's it called, the Mahdi, and Jesus, obviously, the return of Christ, all those different religions that say there's going to be that external savior that's going to come and lead us home. Did you talk to him about that?
No, didn't talk to him about that, but that's certainly a question I can ask him for the next book. No, we didn't get into that at all. So.
Yeah, that'd definitely be a good one. I'd be curious to see how he responded with that. Yeah.
I have a whole list of questions developing from various people for Albert, which I'm going to ask him during the course of writing my next book, and hopefully that one will get in there somewhere, Tom.
Oh, awesome. Okay, well, let's see. I guess we'll go ahead and wrap it up for the first hour here. We're going to let Garnet tell us where we can pick up his books at. And I know you're doing quite a few radio shows, and you spoke at Dolores Cannon's conference there in Arkansas. Have you got anything else on the schedule coming up?
I'm going to be on Dolores Cannon's radio show, The Metaphysical Hour, on Friday, this Friday actually. It's from 7 till 8 Central, or 5 till 6 Pacific time. And that's all I've got lined up so far. I deliberately try to keep August open so that I could focus on getting my nose to the grindstone on my second book. And I'll probably start up again with some more radio shows in September. I know I have I've contacted a number of hosts that are going to get back to me with a date in September, so I don't have that nailed yet, but I intend to keep on doing that. And I had a very successful transformation conference on July 21 or 19 to 21 in Arkansas, Dolores Cannon's. Dolores Cannon, of course, is the owner of Ozark Mountain Publishing, which is my publisher. And I was invited to speak at that conference, and I think it went very well. I got a lot of compliments afterwards, and I had a big lineup of people wanting my book signed after I spoke, so that was a good sign. So I was very pleased with that, and I very happy to meet all the good people in the Ozark Mountain organization who I'd never met before. We just communicated by email. So it was a great thing, and I'm quite happy with the result.
Awesome. She's a beautiful soul. Yeah, I met her a couple of years ago, and fantastic person. So, okay, well, I want to thank everybody for listening to the first hour. If you have not become a member of the Hundredth Monkey Radio, and maybe you're listening on iTunes or on YouTube or one of those other media outlets, I urge you to go over to www.thehundredthmonkeyradio.com and join up and help support Ramon and I and all that we're doing with the radio show. So, okay, well, we'll dig into some really juicy stuff in the second hour. I want to get into the between life stuff. How's this all work in between lives and reincarnation and all this stuff? Some fascinating stuff here, guys. So, we'll talk to you in the second hour. Condemnation without investigation is the height of ignorance.
The love you deny is the pain you carry.
Namaste. And we're going to go out with...
I forgot to mention it.
Who is that? Be the change, right? Oh, no. Pick up the call. This is Perry Mills. Pick up the call.
Yeah. In the beginning, we had Kurt Nugent, and that is Answer the Call.
Yeah, it's a call. It's a call theme.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We'll see you in a second.
Along the way, put aside your petty fight, serve your dignity. You've got to show the heart that you've been hiding and set it free. There's just one door in a world gone wrong. We all need love, and if the cure for one is the cure for us all, there's an urgent message trying to reach you. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. Pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. Pick up the call. It came the same way the very next day. The words they just kept on coming through. Hard to conceive if you believe me. This is what you really want to do. You got to tune into your inner being. Now let it be. You've got to activate your inner vision. Now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter. Now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. Cause don't you know there's just one cure in a world gone wrong. We all need loving. And if the cure for one is the cure for all, step right up and don't be shy. Excuse yourself and pick up the call. Pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call. Pick up the call. one more time before I go. One last thing you need to know, my friends. You want to keep it complicated, it's really all quite simple in the end. You got to tune into your inner being, now let it be. You got to activate your inner vision, now let it see. Cast out the doubt, the mindless chatter, now let it go. It's time to tap into the heart of the matter. Cause don't you know, there's just one cure in the world gone wrong. We all need loving, and if the cure for one is the cure for us all, step right up and don't be shy. Got to look yourself right in the eye. There's a magic moment trying to meet you, an urgent message trying to reach you. The phone is ringing off the wall, so pick up the call. You gotta pick up the call.